Do you ever feel like no matter how hard you try, your results in World of Tanks just stay the same? You have good games, bad games, but somehow you can't figure out why things go right one round and completely fall apart the next. Well, that is exactly what we are fixing today, because in this video I'm going to show you 10 secret tips and tricks that are going to make you a better player. These 10 points are very simple to follow and they're designed to improve your gameplay experience and unlock your inner potential. So watch the video until the very end, because by the end of it, I guarantee you will have become a better player. Being aware of your surroundings is the single most important thing in World of Tanks. This game is like chess. You have to think strategically and always be one step ahead of your opponents. To do this, you must constantly check your surroundings. Between every shot, you need to unzoom and check behind you, carefully checking what your surrounding enemies and allies are doing and assess the situation. It takes a bit of practice if you aren't used to this, but once you do it enough, it will eventually become routine-like and completely automatic. If you see your allies are falling back, do not stay there to take the full onslaught of the enemy's push. If you notice that the enemy is doing the exact same thing and they are leaving a vulnerable target in front of you, that's your clue to push in and deliver the final blow. It is super important that you remain completely aware of what is happening around you, and you can perfectly supplement this ability by constantly checking your minimap as well. Make the minimap size as big as possible, so that it covers a good portion of your screen, and keep checking it every 5 seconds to see what's happening. This is absolutely crucial, and you need to get all information possible to be able to make the most optimal play, be it falling back or pushing in. The majority of World of Tanks is about predicting your enemy's movements, anticipating their next actions, and being a step ahead of them by putting yourself in a position where their play is going to get countered. You must assess threats before they appear. And what I mean by that is, let's say they have an unspotted Jagdpanzer E100, and you're committing to a risky push on an open map with a bunch of bushes in front of you. You need to expect the worst and be prepared that this guy could be looking at you. So take this into consideration when approaching. So to sum up the first point, you have to unzoom after every shot, go into arcade mode and look around your tank to see what's up, as well as keep checking your minimap every 5 seconds. You do this often and it will become automatic, guaranteeing you a clear edge over your allies and opponents in chasing those sweet damage numbers. But before we delve into this World of Tanks secret, Raid Shadow Legends is a fantasy-themed, turn-based RPG where players collect and upgrade champions to battle through campaign missions, dungeons and PvP arenas. You can support me by trying it out, as it's pretty fun and completely free. By downloading it using my special link, you immediately get over $200 worth of rewards. In Raid, you can collect different heroes with unique abilities, you can equip them with items and fight through epic battles. And now Raid also has the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that we all love from our childhood, and they're now playable. So click on the link in the description box, sign up for a new account by following the steps, and then give Raid a try. I'll see you on the battlefield. 3-minute battles are extremely common nowadays in World of Tanks, and knowing when to push or play passive is incredibly important if you want to achieve good results consistently. This chapter directly correlates to being aware and understanding what is currently happening in the match. I will give you a very easy example. You see that there's a massive HP difference in favor of the enemy team. This means that you must play passive and avoid going into negative trades in order to guarantee you the most amount of shots you can get off until the imminent end of the game. In other words, you should play as passive as possible and try to survive until the very end, because only this way you will be able to get most out of the situation. Of course, there are exceptions to this. If you see a vulnerable enemy in front of you that you think you can pick apart easily, you should still push him, but in general, it is best to play passive. If you see that the HP difference is roughly equal and the game is progressing slowly, avoid making any aggressive pushes that could jeopardize you and get you killed easily. Once again, the rule of thumb here is to always play passive unless there's a really good opportunity that you can jump on and capitalize on it. On the other hand, if you see that your team is just slicing through the enemy like hot knife through butter, I recommend you play as aggressively as possible, because you are running against the clock and your allies in this game, in picking up the remainder of the enemy's HP. This is all very logical if you think about it, and once you can master this ability to decide when to go in and when not, it will 100% make you a way better player than before. It is also very important to understand how good your tank is and how confident you feel like going into certain situations. I will give you an example again. The enemy has 2 tier 8 heavies and you're playing a T125, an American tier 10 heavy. You should understand that those 2 tier 8 heavies are easy prey and can hardly outtrade your tank. So you should definitely commit to that situation in order to guarantee as much damage as possible. And this example can be turned around. If you're playing a vastly inferior tank to the enemies, I recommend you play passive and only go in for those cheeky shots once they have fired or they are simply not paying attention to you. It is all super simple, but it is extremely important to go by these principles in order to bring out the maximum of every situation. HP is your most valuable resource in this game. Think of it as a currency, not as health. Every point of HP you spend needs to buy something back. Map control, more damage or tempo. The trick is learning how and when to spend this resource. If you take a hit to remove a dangerous enemy gun or secure a critical position that gets you a good angle on other opponents, that's a good investment and you should always go for it. But if you're trading HP just to get one shot into someone behind cover while taking 2-3 hits, that's a bad trade. And you're throwing money into the wind and you should never ever do that. Here's an easy rule to follow. If you're up on HP, you can afford to play more aggressively and push for more map control and better positions that get you better opportunities. If you're down on HP, your job is to preserve your gun for as long as possible, because even if you only have 1 HP left, you are still alive and your gun is still in the game, which means you can keep stacking the damage up. Another rule I set for myself, and this will sound selfish, is that you should never take damage for your allies. 99% of them will not do that for you either, so I basically only take damage for my allies if it's a high octane clutch situation and I know that I need them by my side to secure victory. Also, never forget that your HP's value increases as the match progresses. Early on, there are plenty of guns. Later on, every single shell will count. Surviving until the end often means getting 2 or 3 extra shots that completely swing the outcome, and as a general rule, you should aim to up the survival rate in every single tank you play. To give you an example, I have around 50% survival rate in most of my tanks, which means I'm alive at the end of every second battle. This is huge, and it will get you so many incredible situations late game that you otherwise could not have taken part in if you were dead. So next time you're in a brawl, ask yourself, is this trade going to be worth it? If the answer isn't a confident yes, don't take it. Trading effectively is about value and not just numbers. A 400 damage shot means nothing if you take 800 in return. You should always think in terms of trade ratio. In normal situations, only peek if you can shoot first or guarantee a better trade than your opponent. Use your allies as distractions and let them bait the shot. Use your allies' HP instead of yours. Then you go in and punish the enemy. This way, you get the same damage output but lose no HP in the process. If you can't find safe trades, switch to passive mode and wait for different opportunities to arise where you can trade better. This will sometimes be incredibly boring, but remember what I told you about staying alive into the late game. It's so worth it, so in the meantime you should cover your allies and monitor the minimap for better positions to rotate to. World of Tanks isn't always about raw damage, it's about playing the long game and milking every bit of damage from what's available. By practicing disciplined trading, you'll start winning PvPs you used to lose and notice your DPG and win rate rising consistently. RNG sucks, we all know it. The plus-minus 25% spread is a huge deciding factor when it comes to shots hitting and penetrating, and it can be extremely frustrating to experience multiple failed shots as a result of this. If you're tired of this, there's 2 surefire ways to mitigate this. By min-maxing your tank's gun, you reduce the dispersion and reload time, so you will have more chances to hit as a result of decreased reload time and improved dispersion. So I recommend you equip your favorite tanks with that bond rammer, bond vents, etc, obviously depending what the tank needs, and to have a good crew. I also recommend running food and directives on every single tank you own because it gives you a 10% net benefit for your crew, which is huge. It is literally another vents, and the results of this are crazy. The downside is that running these can get very expensive, and for some players, getting good equipment and food is harder, and I completely understand this. But this is a surefire way to mitigate some of that nasty RNG that is constantly coming your way. The second way is to fix your aim. Aim is not that important in this game such as in other FPS titles, however, it still constitutes a large portion of you being successful or failing. So I recommend you check out my fresh settings guide where I talk about aim and reticle extensively. Familiarize yourself with those videos and take the steps to make your wrist snap those cupolas more often, because once you improve your aim, it will go a long way in guaranteeing you those juicy games full of damage, and believe it or not, a steady hand with precise aim is also going to mitigate some of that bad RNG you're going to get from a lot of missed shots. Now let's talk about bad teammates. There's nothing you can do about teammates that do not support you when you need them the most. So the absolute best thing you can do is just embrace it and accept that this is something you cannot change. What you can do, however, is very simple. It is very sad, and even though World of Tanks is a team-based game, you should never ever put yourself into a position where success is going to be reliant on whether your teammates show up and decide to support you in your endeavors. For example, say there's a high risk, high reward situation. You are playing on a corridor map and you know that if you push up to a position, you can get loads of damage, but this means that you need to overextend, and that there's a real possibility your allies might not show up to support you and cover your flank. Do you go for it? If you want to stay consistent in this game and deal 3 to 4,000 damage every single battle, then the answer is you shouldn't. Unfortunately, we got to a point in this game where the best play you can do is to sit in the back and wait for your allies to make the pushing move and let them take the damage. In the meantime, you can use that opportunity and shoot the enemy while they're reloading. I know this sounds bad and selfish, but this is the reality of World of Tanks randoms, and this brings us to my next point. This is one of those hidden skills that separates good players from great ones. Every tank in the game has a reload time, and if you can track those in your head, you'll suddenly start outplaying people who have no idea what's happening. Whenever an enemy fires, start counting down in your head. Most heavies hit between 9 to 12 seconds, mediums reload faster, and autoloaders even longer. So you have to push when they fired, peek when they're not ready, and avoid trading when their gun is up. And it's not just about enemies either, it's also important to remember your own reload. If you're low on HP, your reload management can save your life. Don't peek right before you're loaded, wait that extra 1 second so you can shoot and retreat immediately. Timing awareness also includes knowing when to rotate, so if you just fired and your flank is collapsing, that is the perfect moment to start moving, as you're reloading anyway, so you can use that downtime to reposition. I also recommend auto-aiming enemies to lock your gun on them when they are behind cover and when you're reloading. This way you can zoom out, look around and assess the situation without losing your track on the enemy's position. Once you are reloaded, you will only have to adjust your aim minimally to target their weak spots. This habit alone will easily boost your win rate once you get used to it. Map knowledge, getting experience and experimenting with positions is incredibly important. A lot of people ask me how to improve the fastest way in World of Tanks, and my answer is always the same. You need to be playing the game and experiencing as many different situations as possible and learn from these. If you get sent back to the garage with 0 damage, you need to actively try to understand why that happened, what went wrong, and think of ways you could have prevented getting into that situation and play it better. Fortunately, we also have lots of great streamers and content creators on both Twitch and YouTube, and analyzing their gameplay while actively trying to understand why they go into certain positions and do certain things will go a long way in making you a better player in World of Tanks. Map knowledge isn't about memorizing locations, it's about understanding why those positions work. Let's take a common example, Prohorovka. Most players just go hill, mid or 1-2 line with every single tank they are playing, and they never change it based on the enemy's lineup. But great players know exactly when to take those positions and why. They understand how bushes work, what lines of fire open up at different times, and how early spots dictate the tempo of the match. You gain this knowledge 2 ways. You need to experiment. Try different routes and positions yourself. You'll quickly learn which ones get you farmed and which ones farm others. And you also need to study and watch top tier players and notice their positioning, timing and fallback routes. But don't just copy them, you have to analyze their logic and actively try to understand why they do things. Every map has key anchor points, those positions that decide who controls vision and crossfire. Your goal should be to learn where those are and how to reach them safely, depending on your tank type. Once you build that awareness, you'll find yourself predicting how games unfold long before they actually happen. Another golden rule here is that you should always strive to go to flanks where the majority of the enemy's HP is going to be. This will be very tricky with paper tanks that cannot tank damage, but I often catch myself going to the heavy flank with a leopard one, just because I know the tank has insanely good gun handling and penetration and can easily outpick slower, bulkier opponents such as E100s or Mouses. Do you know who loses most games? The people still deciding where to go after the countdown hits 0. Top players completely visualize what is going to happen in a battle based on lineups, and they script their battles accordingly. Every spawn, every map, every tank. By the time the countdown hits 0, they have a plan. Your first minute decides if you're farming or going to be spectating. Taking early positions is insanely important, and they will often decide whether you're going to have a good game or not. During the 30-second countdown, carefully analyze the enemies and your team's lineups and choose the best position to go to that will allow you to get as much damage early on as possible, while retaining the ability of running away if that flank collapses quickly. This game plays like chess, and you need to be a step ahead of the enemy and your allies when it comes to reacting, so you should always have a couple of positions in mind to where you're going to fall back to if this happens. So before every game, I want you to visualize what is going to happen and make a script for the worst case scenario. This way you will be ready when the time comes and you won't have to do the improvisation on the go. So first, visualize the most likely outcome of how battle is going to evolve based on past experiences. And second, you have to choose the best early game position based on a map and lineups. At the start of every match, take a few seconds to analyze the team lists. And ask yourself these simple but important questions. Where will their top tier heavies go? Do we have enough mediums and lights to control vision? And which flank looks weaker, ours or theirs? Once you've answered all of that, you already have a mental map of how the first few minutes will play out. That's what allows good players to rotate early, catch opportunities, and avoid collapsing flanks before it's too late. For example, if you see your entire team pushing one side while the other flank only has 2 tanks holding, you already know that side is going to fail. Don't wait until the minimap turns red to react. You have to move early, set up crossfire, and prepare to farm their push. Reading flow also means recognizing when the battle changes. If you see the enemy's top tier guns go down, that's your signal to go aggressive. And if your team's damage dealers just died, it's time to conserve HP and play for survivor until the very end of the battle. The best players always position themselves where the next fight will be, and not where the last one just ended. Sometimes the best move is not to shoot. Good players know when to hold their shot for a higher value target or a more exposed angle. Let's say you're playing an E5 with 400 alpha damage and 3 tanks peek you at once. A full HP IS-7, a 300 HP medium, and a one-shot light tank. Who are you going to shoot first? If your answer was the light, you are correct. Not for the damage but for the impact. You just prevented a painful late game for you and your allies and removed the spotter from the game, which is extremely important. Target selection should always be based on impact per shell and not necessarily just HP. A 300 damage shot that kills a low HP tank, removing vision or DPM from the enemy is in most cases worth more than a 600 damage shot that leaves 3 enemies alive. And patience ties directly into this. Don't waste shots on bad angles or low chances of penetration. Make sure you're going to 100% penetrate and hit that shell, and therefore waiting an extra 2 seconds to aim properly often means an extra 400 damage instead of another frustrating bounce. So next time you're aiming at an enemy with small weak spots, take the time to fully let that reticle shrink before snapping in for a 0 damage bounce. I know it's hard to remain patient in this game sometimes, but do your best to practice this. One of the most powerful tricks in World of Tanks isn't mechanical, it's psychological. Good players use positioning and armor, and great players use psychology and patterns. What I mean by that is simple. Sometimes it's not about how many shells you have, but how many your enemy thinks you have. If you can make them believe you're stronger than you really are, they're going to hesitate, and hesitation is going to kill them. Here's how it works. Let's say you're in an autoloader. You just emptied your clip and you're on a 25-second reload. Most players would instantly back off, hide behind a rock, and make everybody around you believe that you're useless because you're on reload. Don't do that. Instead, stay calm, keep your turret pointed toward the enemy like you still have shells left. You don't know if they have counted it. Hold your ground confidently, maybe even move a bit more forward to pretend to peek again for half a second. 9 out of 10 players will second guess themselves and assume that you still have one in the chamber. They're going to back off, and those precious seconds give you time to reload safely. You can use the same trick even without an autoloader. Sometimes you're alone on a flank and the enemy is ready to push you because your team is far behind. Instead of running away, you have to fake confidence. Angle your armor, look directly at them, and hold your ground like you got a crossfire watching. A lot of enemies will hesitate because they assume support is around the corner. They delay their push, and that delay often gives your real reinforcements enough time to arrive. But this doesn't mean you should sit there and die heroically. It's about selling the illusion. Peek boldly, then pull back slowly instead of panic driving in reverse. Turn your turret deliberately, make your movements measured, as it tells the enemies you're in control. World of Tanks is as much of a mental game as a mechanical one. The moment your opponent doubts what you're doing, you've already won the trade, even if you didn't fire a single shot. So next time you're reloading or alone on a flank, don't panic, because fake confidence will help you out. For you can sell the illusion and make them afraid of a threat that doesn't even exist. A couple more things. Over time, I noticed a pattern that when an enemy peeks in the open for a long time and never gets punished for it, they'll think that play is safe and they will start peeking and testing the boundaries even more. You can use this to your advantage and anticipate their moves and punish them. Another one. After you pen someone repeatedly, most enemies will get very frustrated and just straight up YOLO you to try and pay you back for the damage. You can also use this to your advantage and anticipate this behavior so that there are no surprises next time this happens and you can prepare for the situation. You can also bait falling back, by backing off slowly and pretending you're leaving a flank until you are spotted, but actually staying where you are. A lot of enemies will think you left, and you can surprise them this way. And finally, when you're fighting a one-shot enemy that you desperately have to remove from the fight, you can also occasionally turn your turret and pretend that you're looking at something else in the distance. You should hold your right mouse button while doing so, and this can actually make the enemy peek into you, not expecting a reaction, and when they do, you can deliver the finishing blow if they're a one-shot. Let's be honest, World of Tanks can be infuriating at times. RNG, RT, matchmaking, trolls, and YOLOers will test your patience every single session. The difference between good and bad players isn't who gets tilted, it's who handles the tilt better. Due to the large random generation factor of this game, you need to understand that there are so many things that you just cannot change or control outside of yourself and your gameplay that will ultimately influence how your games go. So, if you feel frustration or tilt creeping in, I recommend you jump into a fun vehicle or take a break. Because the moment you play emotionally, you will perform way worse as you stop making logical decisions, and in this game that's going to be fatal because of all the aforementioned reasons found in previous points. If you want to become a better player, you have to be mentally consistent and not play the game when you feel tilted. Remember, you can't control RNG or your teammates, but you can control your mindset, and that's what ultimately separates a lot of 50%ers from 60%er ones. Now, if you have watched this far, you now understand that becoming consistent in this game isn't about luck or RNG, it's about discipline, awareness, and constantly outsmarting your opponents and being one step ahead of them. Start applying these points one by one, don't rush it, and I promise your stats, your win rate, and most importantly your consistency will start improving. If you found this video useful and you want to see these principles in action live, consider supporting me on Twitch at twitch.tv/kajzoo. I stream almost every single day, break down gameplay in real time, have a lot of fun, and help players like you turn theory into practice. Guys, remember to sign up for your raid account and give the game a try with my link. You get $200 in rewards, and you also help me make more videos on the channel. Click on the link in the description and sign up today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the battlefield.